Peace and love, everybody. I'm Royce Fletcher Thomason. We're back for another Sunday Hope and Healing session. We're always glad to be able to share a bunch of love, good energy, good vibrations with you and support you in your healing journey, your healing process. Now, I believe that we're all called to serve in some kind of way. I have been very thankful to be in a position where I've been blessed to be a vessel of healing for people all across the globe for 20 something years now. And I'm more than happy to share what it is that I have, what it is that's been afforded to me to help people to experience a transformation as it relates to their health, their even in their mental, emotional well-being, and spiritual growth, development, unfoldment, i.e., evolution. And we're here, happy to offer healing support to anybody and everybody who might be able to benefit from it, whether you're feeling physical pain, you've got other health issues going on. We've done healing right during the broadcast. But beyond that, I'm also looking for people who I have a vision of there being a healer in every home having somebody who can essentially do what it is that I'm able to do. It's something that's exists within all of us and that we're all ultimately capable of. It's just a matter of accessing that which is actually buried within us. And so, whereas I certainly am passionate about supporting people and their healing, helping people to experience a transformation as far as their physical health, their well being is concerned, and really all aspects of wellness are concerned. Something I'm even more passionate about is empowering people who want to do what I'm doing. It's one thing for me to be able to do it, uh, but it's something even more about to me, something even more valuable for you to be able to do this yourself and to be able to also help inspire and play a transformative role in the lives of the people who you touch. There's a limited number of people that I can reach individually, but there are people that you can reach. There are people in your life that you can help and that you can be a blessing in their life. And so that's something I'm very passionate about. So welcome to everybody who's here today. Sending out a whole bunch of love your way, good vibrations in your direction. And I pray grace and peace is upon you, and well being is within you and making its way to the surface to manifest outwardly in your life. If you would just drop a hello or something in the chat, let us know that you're here. That's the only way that I know who's here is when you comment. I can't see who just pops in. But welcome to everybody who's here. If you feel like somebody is can be blessed by the work we do, please share it with folks. Whether it's, if you're watching this on YouTube at the Matrix Healing YouTube channel, send somebody a text message with a link and share just briefly why you want them to check it out, the benefit that you feel like they could receive from it. So, at any rate, we offer healing every session. If somebody has a physical pain that you're experiencing in your body, let us know in the comments during the broadcast, preferably earlier in the broadcast. We'll address it on the spot. Um, is it possible for a person to become free of pain during a live broadcast that's done on the internet? Yes, we've seen it happen before. Actually, I was doing healing on the internet. Whew, I was doing healing on the internet before there was a Facebook, actually. So, just in a chat room, I was doing that. It's very much possible. It's very much possible. I maintain that with God, all things are possible, and I've seen some things that most people would consider impossible prove to be possible. At any rate, we frequently have some kind of topic or some focal point that we'll deal with on a Sunday, especially if there isn't somebody jumping off in the beginning saying that they have some health concern that they'd like to have addressed. And so last week we dealt with the thing about forgiveness. And there was just so much to me that was there yet to be uncovered. We went a half hour over last week, and there was still a lot to address. And so this week we're doing the thing about forgiveness part two. The thing about forgiveness part two. And the reason that I believe that this is so fundamental, that this is so key, is because I maintain that there are 6 degrees of forgiveness, right? There's 6 directions, if you will, of forgiveness. The forgiveness that we need to extend to someone else that we believe has offended us in some way. The forgiveness that we need to extend to ourselves, which we frequently don't even think about. A lot of times we're angry with ourselves for putting ourselves subconsciously, deeply subconsciously, upset with ourselves because of we should have known better, or we put ourselves in the position to be hurt in that way. And then on another level, um, the soul knows your innocence. Your soul knows your innocence, and your soul knows the innocence of the folk who do things that you feel hurt by as well. And so there's an aspect in terms of forgiving yourself where you are on some level judgmental towards your brother or your sister in creation. And on some level, that's not sitting right with you. And that's a whole nother reason that it's important to be able to forgive yourself. And one that we frequently also don't think about needing to forgive is God. And while God doesn't innately need any forgiveness from any of us, greetings, Curly Conscious King. Good to have you in the space as always. Good hanging out with you last night at the Saturday Transcending the Matrix support session. At any rate, we don't frequently think about needing to forgive God, because we how could we possibly have a need to forgive God? God is perfect, right? And then on some level, have this internal conflict going on that we don't even allow ourselves to recognize. But the reality is that essentially everybody on the planet needs to forgive God, not because God needs the forgiveness, but because you need to let it go. We as humans need to let it go. We need to forgive God because we feel like, how could an all powerful being allow this to have happened to me? Right? How we think that God let this happen. And so on some level, we blame God for the thing that happened. And maybe it's a lot of times it's well beneath our radar. It's not even in our conscious awareness. It's something that's deeply buried within our subconscious. And so we end up not having a trust. How can you trust yourself if you don't trust God? How can you trust others if you don't trust yourself? Right? And so if you're walking through life and you're not able to have a sense of trust, you're walking through life in a state of fear and anxiety. Who wants that crap, right? But it is a function of this thing that I'm talking about here. Now, that's the 3 things, the 3 degrees of forgiveness that I just spoke of, or the 3 directions of forgiveness that I just spoke of, were all outward. Okay. Um, that we need to do something, that we need to somehow bring ourselves to a state of forgiveness. Now, there are 3 more degrees, the same 3 that went outward. Also, we need to receive forgiveness from. We need to receive forgiveness from those whom have been hurt by our actions, or in some cases by our lack thereof. Right? A lot of times we, in a sense of pride, don't believe that anybody has anything to forgive us for. when the reality is, in many situations, we would have been pretty pissed off if somebody um, had done to us what we did to someone else, or let something happen or failed to show up in our lives. Not always the same situation, but frequently there are issues where people, there are times where people have issues with us, and we even, you know, can have the mindset, oh, they just need to let that go. I didn't mean anything by it. They need to let it go. And it's possible that you didn't mean anything by it. And yes, on a certain level, it is true that they need to let it go. But there is also some responsibility that you bear in a situation. And the key foundational point in terms of the receiving uh, forgiveness has a lot to do with a sense of compassion, right? Really, there's a strong link between forgiveness and love and compassion in general. The reality is that somebody felt hurt as a result of your actions, behaviors, words, or the omission thereof, right? And in the process of that, they experienced a sense of damage from that. Now, I I spoke earlier. I want to see a healer in every home in the planet. Somebody who is taking up that mantle of being able to see through the Maya, see through the illusion, if you will, of pain, sickness, and disease, and bring forth a higher level of the expression of living into the planet, into each household, and spreading out through families, through communities, and ultimately the globe and the cosmos. That's what I'm about. And so that's you know kind of frankly why I do this. But sometimes people will harp on something that happened months ago, weeks ago, years ago, decades ago, even, and they keep maybe bringing something up. And the reason that they keep bringing it up is because they don't feel that we ever became present to the damage that they experienced. And we may write off, dismiss, or minimalize their pain or their negative experience and fail to own whatever responsibility we had in it. And so, um, while each person has their own work to do, that includes you and me, right? We have a responsibility to correct an action. That's what repentance is a word frequently used. I feel like kind of in a way that doesn't quite capture what the real essence of repentance is. Repentance isn't just the changing of your behavior. Repentance is a changing of your mind that ends up manifesting as a change in your behavior. Otherwise, anything else is just going through the motions. And so, actually giving a person space where they feel heard, and you're able to genuinely, from a true heart space, come to appreciate their experience, their pain. Doesn't mean you have to take it on, but being able to truly appreciate that that is their experience, and even look within to see what role you might have actually played in that. Now, that doesn't mean that you need to let somebody guilt you for the rest of your life. I absolutely don't believe in that. But you can set yourself up for a position of being able to receive forgiveness when you significantly and genuinely take ownership, look at what your fault or your error in the situation was, and make steps to repair the damage. Okay, the damage in the relationship, the damage that person experienced, and quite possibly the damage that you might have done to yourself, and that you aren't even giving yourself permission to look at, identify, and see. Okay. We also need to receive forgiveness from ourselves. Just like we need to extend forgiveness to ourselves, we need to receive it from ourselves. We need to So often we're looking for something from the outside. We're looking for something from somebody else. We're looking for approval from the outside. We're looking for love from the outside. We're looking for validation from the outside. We're looking to see how many likes we got on our posts. Those are all things that we're looking to from the outside. And this is something that's really pervasive within human beings. But really, at the end of the day, it's all an inside job. The reason that you make the unhealthy choices in relationships that you do is because you're withholding love from yourself. The reason that you make the unhealthy choices as far as decisions that you make in life is a function of withholding love from yourself. The reason that so many of the uh, so much of the toxicity that you expose yourself to, a lot of that is because you're withholding love from yourself and you don't even necessarily recognize that, right? And you need to receive forgiveness from yourself. You need to extend forgiveness to yourself and receive forgiveness from yourself. Whether you choose to own it or not, whether you choose to own it or not, a key to your deliverance, your transformation, your healing, your sense of wholeness is connected with you extending forgiveness to the part of you that put yourself in a certain situation and receiving forgiveness from yourself. Range. If you have a question about that, please put it in the comments and I'll kind of elaborate on that. But we really do need to receive a sense of forgiveness from ourselves. When we receive that sense of forgiveness from ourselves, we're able to breathe again. We're able to exhale. We're able to relax. All right. And we need to receive forgiveness from God. The reality is that all of us have missed the mark. All of us have fallen short. All of us have made some decisions and done some things that negatively impacted us as well as other people. All of us have done some things that have, rather than adding to life, have detracted from life. We all have done this. And yet, in the midst of that, an all powerful and simultaneously all loving God holds us in a space of forgiveness. All right. It doesn't mean we don't need to do something to repair the damage that we're doing because we still do. But that's a love that's filled with grace. There isn't anything that you can do that can make God stop loving you. There are, however, things that you can do that can separate you from the experience of that love. And so, as a function of that, it's important to really, as I said before, to really receive the forgiveness, it requires a degree of humility. It requires a degree of humility to be able to sit or stand in a state of deep appreciation for the fact that, in spite of whatever your behavior was, whatever your words were, whatever damage that you've done, that there's grace to cover that. And you can receive that when you own your error. It's hard to receive it when you don't own your error. But when you do own your error, you can really be blown away by the grace that's extended to you in the midst of that, right? People talk about love and, talk about love and falling in love and stuff. And uh, falling in love is referred to as falling in love because it doesn't take anything for that to happen. You just let go and you just allow yourself to free fall. Looking forward to going skydiving soon. You just allow yourself to free fall And so it's referred to as falling in love, but that isn't necessarily a deep love. The deep love doesn't rise to the surface, doesn't manifest itself until there's been something that's challenged the love, something that's challenged you inside. When you see this person that you love going through deep challenges and deep pain, then you want to do anything within your capability of making that better. When you get to a point where you realize that things in you have resulted in stagnation, limitation, pain, heartache, heartbreak, or something else within this other person, that you come to a point where you're willing to challenge and defeat your own demons because you love this person so much that you don't want them to be subject to your own lower nature. And so you transcend, you take that as an impetus to challenge yourself, to rise to be the best version of yourself that you can possibly be, not to be accepted by them in a people pleasing kind of way, but because you truly want them to be blessed and you don't want you to be a hindrance to their blessing. Those kinds of things are things that bring up a deeper level of love. And in terms of being able to receive this grace, receive this forgiveness, it requires us to really look at ourselves and submit something within ourselves to the grace of God. All right. I feel like I'm getting a little preachier than I intended to. But hey, that's what it is. And so I want to check in with you all and ask, where are you as far as extending forgiveness, whether to someone else, yourself, or to God? Where are you as far as receiving forgiveness from someone else, from yourself, or from God? I submit to you that nobody who's watching this is there 100% on any of these six degrees of forgiveness or six directions of forgiveness. I believe that there's room for growth for all of us. Curly Conscious King says you're speaking the truth. Ashe. Yes, and so let's talk about this a little bit, and we'll get into a little bit of the healing too. Sometimes we're reluctant about forgiving because we prefer. My intention is not to step on anybody's toes. However, I'm willing to do that if it brings to your awareness an area where there's opportunity, room, or need for growth. Sometimes we're not willing to extend forgiveness because we prefer to hold on to our victim stories. Sometimes we're not willing to forgive because we prefer to hold on to our victim stories. Now, that doesn't mean you go telling somebody who has been hurt by you that they need to get over their victim story. That's not my purpose in saying this. Even though on some level that would have to be true, your job is to do what your job is to do, not necessarily to tell the other person what their job is to do. All right. Sometimes we're reluctant to forgive because we want to remain angry. Sometimes we're reluctant to forgive because we want to punish that person for hurting us. The reality is, anytime you are reluctant to forgive, you are punishing you. You think you're punishing that person, and maybe on some level you are, but the person that you're really punishing is you. All right? By allowing that negativity, that resentment, that whatever that negative emotion is to sit inside of you and fester, it's damaging to you. I mentioned last week A saying that I heard from friend Spencer Murray, that unforgiveness is like taking poison and expecting the other person to die. It doesn't really work like that, right? And so sometimes we will kind of subconsciously take on that attitude, that we're not going to forgive because we think that something is going to get the other person back by our not forgiving. No, it's getting us. And again, I said this last week, I'm going to say it again this week. Forgiveness does not mean that you continue to welcome a person into your life. Forgiveness can happen. You can still let somebody be in your life who you've not forgiven, and you can forgive somebody who you choose to no longer extend the privilege to them of their presence in your life. Okay. What it really comes down to is the heart space from which you're operating. Okay. And a lot of situations, if somebody um, is treating you with indignity, and you're allowing it to continue to happen, is because there is an issue that you may somehow have within yourself towards you, that you need to forgive yourself for, and develop the strength to extend some healthy boundaries for yourself. Boundaries aren't things that you extend for other people. Boundaries are things that you extend for yourself, for your own sense of well-being. And if those boundaries are crossed, then the choice is how you're going to respond, not react, but how you're going to respond to that situation. You're going to create distance with this person. You're going to make some healthy choices to make sure that your well-being is kept intact. All right. You have conversations with yourself about the positions that you put yourself in. You know, I'll be honest with you. I had a conversation with myself today. I knew that we were going to talk about this today. I said that last week, that we were going to have part two today. But I was having a conversation with myself today. Sometimes there are things that happened in our childhood that we didn't get what we were looking for. You need to parent yourself today. You can't sit the rest of your life blaming your parents for what they did to you or what they didn't do for you. Sometimes you have to get in this space of parenting yourself from the more mature version of yourself, ministering to your own inner child. Sometimes you might have situations with a loved one where something didn't work out with a spouse or a romantic partner, where things didn't work out the way that you would have wanted to. Well, sometimes you need to be the person who speaks to that person. Sometimes you want somebody to love you, to shower you with kindness and warmth and affection. Sometimes you want to be able to receive someone pouring into you in life affirming ways. Sometimes you want somebody to protect your sense of well-being. Sometimes you want somebody to you want to feel secure, you want to feel taken care of, you want to feel looked out for. You can be the person to do that in a truly genuine, loving way. In a truly genuine, loving way. And it doesn't make you crazy to have these conversations with yourself. The reality is, you talk to yourself more than you do to anybody else. You might not be doing it out loud all the time. A lot of it might be subconscious conversations, that things that you're telling yourself about yourself. Many of them unhealthy and toxic. Many of them are a function of past experiences that you've had in your life that have kind of created some neural pathways in your brain, causing you to see things a certain way, and then you get stuck in seeing things that way. But as the Master Jesus said, that your eye is the lamp of your body. And if your eye is single, if your eye is whole, your whole body will be filled with light. So a lot has to do with your perspective on a thing. And if you can have your perspective changed, if you can have your perspective elevated, be transformed by the renewing of your mind, right? If you can have your perspective upgraded and elevated, then how you end up feeling about yourself, about other people, and in life goes to a whole nother level of well-being. Okay. Dr. Kafera says you're beating yourself up for being late on this call. Guess what, Dr. Kafera? I was late too. I think it was like 3 or 4 minutes after before the live started. You are forgiven for your tardiness. But a reality is that we are all worthy of love. I shared a couple of weeks ago a difference between entitled and worthy. Sense of entitlement comes from a sense of arrogance. You feel like it's owed to you. A sense of worthiness actually comes from a state of humility. You're worthy of it because even in all of your mess, God looks upon you and calls you worthy. All right? And so I believe that is warranting, that is due a certain level of humility with that, a confident humility, but humility nonetheless, or a confidence that is born of humility, or humility that is born of confidence. But those two are still at work nonetheless. All right. And so, as it relates to this thing about forgiveness, who is it that we really need to forgive in our lives? I'm really wanting to make the question personal. You can type it in the chat if you want to. You can just speak it out loud in your space wherever you are. Who is somebody that you need to forgive? Maybe some other person, yourself, God. Who is somebody that you need to forgive? And Jennifer says ourselves. If who you need to forgive is yourself, say your name out loud. Say it, I need to forgive, and then put the person's name behind it. And if that person is you, state your own name. And then add behind that the word for, and then whatever you need to forgive that other person, yourself, or God for. Okay? Put it out there. Put it out there. And I'm going to, even in this moment, I'm going to encourage you to allow yourself to feel the totality of whatever that negative emotion is that you feel you need to forgive somebody else for. Dr. Kafera says, forgive myself for forgiving others before me. Ooh, I heard that. You all in my email on that, Dr. Kafera. How many times have I had situations where I was so-called forgiving somebody else? And in my mind, I was forgiving them. But the reality is I wasn't really establishing any healthy boundaries. And I was just putting myself in a position to be repeatedly dishonored as a human being in whatever way, sometimes in insignificant, less significant ways than others. But at the end of the day, who I needed to forgive was me. The same is true with you. Times that you might have in name forgiven somebody else, you really, the reality is that you weren't really forgiving that other person because you weren't really forgiving yourself. The key person in that situation that you needed to forgive was you. The key person that you needed to forgive in that situation was you. Okay. And so there is a hierarchy of forgiveness, if you will. who we need to start with forgiving is God. When we allow ourselves to realize that we truly can come to a state of forgiving God, because the reality is we all know on a certain level, it's ridiculous to feel a need to forgive God. Guess what's even more ridiculous is to not feel a need to forgive God, because in your mind, in the back of your mind somewhere, you're upset with God about something that happened in your life. Really, quite frankly, upset with God about everything that happened in your life that you weren't happy about, right? But when you really get to the state of forgiving God for whatever it was that happened in your life, it makes it easier for you to look at yourself and then forgive yourself for what you did. Now, the Kafara says, I was holding myself hostage without a ransom, and it stops now in this moment. Ashe, I heard that. The reality is, when we choose to stop beating up on ourselves, we can arrive at that state of really genuine, true forgiveness, right? And then when you can get to a point of really, truly forgiving yourself, I'm not talking about a lip service forgiving yourself. You can choose at that point to also forgive that other person, whoever that other person or whoever those other people might be, right? Um, there's I posted this at some point, not that long ago on social media. Said someone asked a wise soul, what is anger? I think it was, what is anger? And this wise soul said, the punishment you give yourself for somebody else's mistake. The punishment that you give to yourself for the mistake somebody else made. Right? And so we end up holding on to that negativity. That what that negativity does is it releases cortisol, adrenaline, norepinephrine, these stress hormones. Our body was not meant to dwell in a continuous state of stress. Hor- Adrenaline is released to put us in a state of fight or flight, to be able to give us the physical energy to do what physically needs to be done if we're in a state of danger. What ends up happening is we don't end up physically fighting or physically running or physically exerting ourselves in some way. And so what happens is that it creates a higher rate of blood coagulation in our body. It makes our heart have to work harder. It constricts the blood vessels. It creates physiological dysfunction within our body, and it shortens our lifespan. Not to mention the fact that it robs us of the experience of joy. You want joy in your life? Let's get to the space of really genuinely looking at what's really going on beyond the illusion, right? Let's forgive God, ourselves, and other people. Let's do the inner work. Now, I'm going to ask you all, this is maybe the harder question. Who do you need to receive forgiveness from? And I want you to say this out loud. If you want to put it in the comments, that's fine too, but at least, and I want you to definitely say it out loud. I need to receive forgiveness from, and then say that person's name. And then add to that for, and whatever you need to receive forgiveness from them for. That requires a certain degree of humility and really looking at yourself. Who do you need to receive forgiveness from? And granted, you can't make them forgive you, but you can make the whatever the necessary correction is. Now, I do want you to put in the comments, perhaps, on a scale of 0 to 10, with 0 being no need and 10 being ultimate need, on what level you need to receive forgiveness. Right? To what degree do you need to actually receive forgiveness from such and such other person or people, from yourself, from God, right? The reality is we all need to receive forgiveness from somebody, from some other person or people, definitely from ourselves and definitely from God. Where would you rate yourself right now in terms of uh, the receiving forgiveness scale, right? May require some deep introspection to really get present to that. And that's okay. That's okay. But I do invite you to do the introspecting, to do the internal inventory, to look at that. And while you're doing that, we're going to do some healing. We're going to allow some more healing to go forth. Dr. Kafira says, I need to receive forgiveness for needing apology or compensation for offenses I never communicated to them about. Okay. All right. So, in essence, what I hear you saying, um, Dr. Kafira, is you need to forgive them for what they didn't do, and you need to forgive yourself for holding them captive to that. So, I see you addressing this kind of both ways, right? We all need to extend forgiveness. We all need to receive forgiveness in all 6 directions that I spoke about before. And in terms of other people, there are a lot of people that we need to forgive for a lot of stuff, right? And there are a lot of people that we need to make things right with for a lot of stuff. There I can say in my own life, there have been things that they were totally in my blind spot. I had no idea what my error was in situations of dealing with other people. I had no idea. And then when I end up getting to a point of becoming present to that, that's when a change happened. And it's when changes happened in those relationships, but especially in my relationship with me, right? In my relationship with me. Uh, it requires a certain degree of humility, you know, um, and it creates a certain degree of humility, coming to the recognition of what damage you have done and then taking responsibility to correct that. Okay, taking responsibility to correct that. So let's go ahead and get into some healing. And I want you all to actually say a prayer. I want you all to say a prayer, and I want you to fill in the blanks for yourself. Okay, and whatever it is that you need to put there. I'm going to do a healing on it, but this prayer is going to be a little bit different than it usually is because I'm not going to do so much a general prayer. I want you to do the specific prayer, whatever your specific prayer is, but plugging in certain blank spaces, if you will. Um, Certain people's names, certain things that were done, certain places where there were specific violations, if you will. And then when we do the healing, it's going to be more so addressing your more specific issue. All right. So I want you all to kind of repeat after me, whether you want to do it silently or out loud is completely up to you. But I do want you all to participate in this prayer with me actively yourselves, not just passively hearing me, but actively yourselves as well. So let's do this now. God, I know you to be a healer, a deliverer, a redeemer. And through the purity that this moment allows, I receive your healing, your redemption, and your strength to forgive, and then put whoever's name in there that you need to forgive. Even if it's you, put your name there. For, and whatever you need to forgive them for. And I receive your forgiveness from, and whoever you need to receive that forgiveness from. For, and whatever you need to receive that forgiveness for. Neutralizing all obstacles to forgiveness. From every cell of my body and every particle of my existence. And transmuting it into and replacing it with being and feeling truly free. And I receive it as so. On this date, and then this time and space called now. Thank you. Thank you, God, for this gift of your divine love. It is done. It is done. It is done. All right. So let's get into it now. And I'm going to kind of help walk you through this process a little bit. And so I want you to think about that thing that you did. No, let's start with this. Think about the thing. Yeah, think about the thing that you did that you need to. No, keeps saying no. It's switching. Think about the thing that you feel was done to you that you need to extend forgiveness for. Think of the thing that was done to you. And what I want you to do is I want you to get present to where in your body you're feeling this uncomfortability. There's somewhere in your physical body that it will register. You might feel it in your heart, you might feel it in your shoulders, you might feel it in your head. And I want you to invite love. The love that I'm talking about is a love that is filled with grace, God's unconditional love, the love of God into the place where you're feeling the tension or the uncomfortability, whatever it might be. Invite the presence of God's love into that space. Both physically and emotionally. Invite it into the physical place where you see it, feel it registering or showing up in your body, and invite it into your heart. Invite it into the place that you've shut up within yourself, where you've held on to these feelings of anger or vengefulness or wanting to get wanting the other person to suffer in some kind of way. Welcome it into the place where you felt hurt, where you felt dishonored, devalued. Welcome it into the place where you felt abandoned, or where you felt betrayed. Welcome into the place where your hurt has existed. It is a scientific law that two things cannot occupy the same place at the same time. And so hostility and love can't exist in the same place. Bitterness and love can't exist in the same place. Resentment and love cannot exist in the same place. You don't have to chase the resentment away. Just invite love into the place where the resentment has been, and resentment will automatically melt away. Okay? Now, there may be several people who you might have named and several things that you might have listed. I'm going to ask you one by one, even after this session, after this broadcast is over. I want you to one by one invite love into that space where that existed. I want you to become present now to what you're needing forgiveness for, what you're needing to receive forgiveness for, whatever it is that you might have done that has created a need for you to receive forgiveness, a damage that you've done perhaps to someone, or you need to receive forgiveness. I want you to get present to a reality is that the way that we were designed is we can't do wrong to somebody else without it impacting us somehow. We may numb ourselves to that. And there are a lot of different things that we can do to try to numb ourselves to that. But the reality is, we cannot cause pain to somebody else without it impacting us some way. And so I want us to take a moment and get present to what feeling, and this may not feel too comfortable, and that's okay. Man up, woman up, put your big boy or your big girl britches on and display the humility to own your stuff, to own your error, to own your fault. Doesn't mean you're going to condemn yourself for it, but I do want you to own it. All right. And then I want you to become present to the feeling that that brings up for you, whether that's regret, embarrassment. Sometimes we do things that negatively impacted other people, and then we punish them for the thing that we did to them out of a sense of shame because it feels too uncomfortable to own that sense of shame, or we feel embarrassed. And so that can be something that can serve as a block or a hindrance to keep us from moving forward in the repair of the relationship. I want to invite you now to get present to whatever that feeling is, whether it's a sense of guilt, a sense of embarrassment, a sense of shame. We're not going to leave you there, but we do want to challenge you to go there. Even if it's a sense of self hatred or disgust, I want you to own that for the moment. Allow yourself to get present to it. And then I want you to welcome the love of God that is completely filled with grace into that space. Scripture says that love covers a multitude of sins. Sin is really what it means is just missing the mark. We've all made some mistakes. We've all missed the mark. Invite love into the space where you feel however you feel. Invite love into that space. Dr. Kafera says that she needs to write out and release, acknowledge how she's heaped coals on her own head, right? Taking on the assignment, apologizing to self and others. I encourage all of you who feel so inclined to do so, to do so. And if you don't feel inclined to do so, I want to challenge you to challenge yourself to do it anyway, right? Now, let's look at this thing. Let's look at karma. Because there can be a sense of sometimes, hmm, there's a story in the biblical record very early on in the book of Genesis. Um, by chapter 3, it's laid out there that Eve partook of the forbidden fruit. Um, and then, as a result, Adam partook of the forbidden fruit and blamed Eve. A lot of times, when somebody has done something to us, or we feel somebody has done something that has negatively impacted us, we do the same thing and then blame them for it. All right. How many times has a person experienced being cheated on and then they went and did the very thing that had caused them pain? How many times has somebody, people who become abusers in whatever form that shows up, are typically people who have been themselves victims of abuse. And it's out of a sense of deep shame that they end up doing the very thing that they despised, right? And so, similarly, how many times has someone done something and then the same thing they did to somebody else came and visited their doorstep, right? Maybe you were the person who did the cheating and then had somebody turn around and do the same to you. Maybe you were the person who um, was uh, dismissive towards somebody else, and then somebody else end up responding in a dismissive way towards you. Maybe you're always going off on the handle on people, and then you find that people tend to dishonor and disrespect you, right? Karma is not intended to punish. It's a teacher that exists to breed a sense of compassion, and it thus desires to live a short life. All right. But let's address some karmic issues here. All right. Want to deal with karma, whether it's real karma or imagined karma, karma where you feel like something is owed to you, like you're due some bad thing happening to you. Ooh, that's a big issue for somebody here, maybe several somebodies here. All right. And because this isn't just limited to people who are watching this live, that could very much be the case for somebody who's going to catch this on a playback. The reality is that the healing transcends time and space. Thank God for that. Okay. All right. So we want to look at both the real karma and the imagined karma. All right. I want to delete, erase, transmute that. Okay. And we want to take whatever these situations have been, and we want to send them to the light of God's love to be healed and transformed. And then we want to create within ourselves a sense of compassion for whomever we've hurt and whomever else has experienced something similar, even if we weren't the person who was responsible for it. Our reality is that we contribute to a lot of stuff that we don't even let ourselves know, right? If we really were to take a good look at ourselves, there'd be a lot that we wouldn't feel good about ourselves about. Don't want you to stay there. I do want you to own it and then move on from there. All right. All right. So a lot of times, resistance to forgiveness is tied to a sense of arrogance. Us not thinking we need to be forgiven. And that's actually coming up as an issue. And so let's transmute that sense of arrogance into a sense of honesty and integrity. I want to transmute that arrogance into honesty, integrity, and a healthy form of humility. I don't mean a false humility, but actually a healthy form of humility. Right? All right. All right. And I also want to um, let's look at any sense of unworthiness, because that's coming up as an issue too. We want to delete that sense of unworthiness, transmute that into openness to receive all of the good that God has for us, not based upon us, but based upon God. All right. Our worthiness has nothing to do with us. Our worthiness is rooted completely in God. Okay. And let's look at that sense of entitlement that I spoke to earlier. Let's delete that sense of entitlement from its root cause, as well as any cumulative effects of that sense of entitlement. All right. And negative attitudes that we have regarding it, and the sense of brokenness that it comes. Whew, that was a big thing. And the sense of brokenness that that comes from. All right. All right. And then let's replace that with, again, a sense of humility, genuine worthiness, and self love. An attitude of entitlement is a withholding of self love. We want to transmute that into a greater sense of self love. All right. Okay. Also, let's just look at um, negative lessons that we learned in childhood. Sometimes there are things that we from our early formative years that we took on, and it ends up impacting how we show up in life later on, our attitudes towards other people, our attitudes towards ourselves. That sense of entitlement can often come from that sense of unworthiness, can often come from that. All right. And quite frankly, most of us need to extend forgiveness for something that happened when we were still very young. All right. Things that we've held on to for a long time. Okay. All right. There are a whole bunch of those things. All right. So let's submit that to the light of God's love to be transmuted, purified. All right. All right. Now I want to actually look real quickly at um, subconscious need for us to punish ourselves. All right. From the point of the root cause. I want to deal with the um, concept in the collective consciousness of original sin and transmute that back to original innocence, return to original innocence, and deal with like dark areas in your soul from things that you've taken on, ways that you've, in different ways, sold your soul. We want to bring in a sense of forgiveness for that and a reclaiming of your soul to be reclaimed by the light of God's love. In whatever dark areas, dark spaces that you've gone to in your life, in terms of things that you've done, stories that you've telling yourself, that you've been telling yourself, as well as things that you've done to others. All right. Transmute that into a sense of divine redemption. Sense of divine redemption. You know, when we're operating in our innocence, we can't see other people or ourselves in negativity. Take something to get there though. And to do so from a genuinely mature place, right? Okay. All right. I'll do just a couple other things and then we'll close it out for the day. So I want to look at our own receptivity to dark forces. Okay. We can be impacted by dark forces when we're in some way resonating with them. Um, we've somehow created an open door. So we want to change that. We want to shift, our own vibration so that we're no longer a match to that. So it can't come our way. It doesn't have a receptive place through which to come. All right. Frequently, guilt and shame can be a space that makes room. Um, and sometimes, it can be a lack of willingness to let go of something from the past. So let's deal with releasing soul ties. Okay. Well, release the soul ties. Release the soul ties that are connected at the heart. Release the soul ties that are connected at the base of our spine, to release the soul ties that are connected at our genitals. And in our heads. Okay. We also want to reclaim the fragments of our soul that we've given away, for them to be cleansed and filtered through the light of God's love and to return back to us. And we want to also return any fragments of anybody else's soul that we have claimed. A sense of having power over them sometimes in some way. Sometimes we manifest as a stronghold in somebody else's life. And it's in our own sense of pride or even in our own sense of inadequacy, our own insecurities. Whew, that insecurities was a big one. So we want to transmute that sense of insecurity with this feeling of security. At the base of your spine, I want you to welcome the light of God's love into that space. Program in security, 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 security. Rooted in the light of God's love. Right? And now I want to ask you all each to just take a moment, and particularly with those from whom you need to receive forgiveness. And I want to encourage you to just see a light coming from your heart, going to their heart, not from your mind. This isn't an intellectual exercise. A light going from your heart to their heart. And in that light that's going from your heart to their heart, sense of genuine compassion, and respect and appreciation. All right. And then allow yourself to see that relationship being healed. It doesn't have to be somebody who's still on the planet, by the way. It could be somebody who's no longer sucking wind. That's how I like to put it. See that relationship being repaired. And even if it may not be repaired in the physical realm, see it being repaired in the inner realms, right? And from this state, God, thank you for the healing that's taken place on today. Thank you for bringing us into a greater degree of redemption, a greater degree of wholeness, a greater degree of self love. And as we forgive ourselves, others, and you, we've entered into a greater degree of freedom. As we've allowed ourselves to get into a genuinely, authentically receptive state to receive forgiveness, we've ascended to a greater degree of spiritual maturity. open-heartedness, and awareness. And we give thanks for that as well as the countless bountiful bright blessings that shall unfold as a result of us doing this most sacred and most important work. Thank you. Thank you for these blessings as a function of your love. We claim it as so. Ashe and amen. All right, beloveds. That pretty much wraps us up for today. We certainly welcome you to share this with anybody you feel like can benefit from it. And don't just share it, share why you're sharing it. Say something about why you're sharing it so they'll actually understand why it is that they're sharing it and why they should actually open it and take time to listen to it. Also, this kind of thing can be very beneficial to play while you're going to sleep. Okay. When your mind is in a receptive state. Okay. When you enter into a more relaxed state and your mind becomes more receptive, it's a great time to play this, even if you're falling asleep to it. Because there you enter into that greater state of openness. Okay. Openness to whatever it is that's on your mind when you're going to sleep. You might even see some things show up in your dream state that are receptive, that are, kind of connected with that, right? There may be a conversation that you might have in a dream state. It could even be with somebody who's no longer here, where you're getting a sense of the repair is being done or the repair has been done, right? A greater degree of wholeness, a greater experience of wholeness manifesting itself as a result. Okay. So, as always, we're glad to be here with you. If you at any point feel like you'd like to, know a little more about what it is that we're doing and you want to kind of become in a more active way a part of this work, listen. hmm, The harvest is plenty, but the laborers are few. If you would like um, to connect with this work, feel free to reach out to me. You can reach out to me on Facebook or Instagram at Royce Fletcher Thomason, or on Instagram at Transcending the Matrix. We're happy to share this sacred work with you. We believe that it will transform your life and it'll make life better for everybody else in your life. The more evolved we are, the more effectively we deal with our own stuff, the better we are for the people that we care about. And we break certain patterns that have been passed down through our family lineage. And we open up new opportunities, doors to new blessings for future generations. That's my story. I'm sticking to it. Also, if you feel like you got any value in this and you want to contribute to what it is that we're doing, we certainly welcome that. You can do so via Cash App at $Royce F. Thomason if you feel so led. Anyway, other than that, we will be back on next Sunday. In the meantime, as always, I send you forth with a bunch of peace and love. Catch you later.